Okay. Good morning, guys. I'm out here in ancient Thebes. This is the city of Thebes, and it's a sad story. It's one of the uh, more morose and depressing stories. But anyway, this is Oedipus, the story of poor Oedipus. All right, let's get into it right now, and we'll read that. It's relatively short, but it's sad. It's kind of a brutal story. All right, so Oedipus. One day, a blind old man came to Theseus and asked for permission to stay in his kingdom and die in peace. No one dared let him stay in their country, for he was pursued by the avenging Furies, the Erinyes. Homeless, he wandered about. The old man, whose name was Oedipus, then told Theseus his sad story. His misfortunes had started before he was born. His father, King Laius of Thebes, had been told by the oracle of Delphi that the child his queen Jocasta was carrying was fated to kill his father and marry his mother. This must never happen, thought the king. So when Oedipus was born, he ordered a servant to take the child away and abandon him in the mountains. But destiny had willed it differently. A shepherd from the neighboring kingdom of Corinth heard the child's cries. He picked up the little boy and carried him to his king. The king and queen of Corinth were childless, and happily they adopted the handsome little boy. They loved him dearly, and he never knew that he was not their real son. Okay, you're following so far? So the first king of Thebes, Laius, he was told that his son will kill him and marry then his wife, meaning the child's mother. He said, no, this will never happen. So they abandoned him, and then some other person found him in a different kingdom, and so they gave it to the king and queen. Now he thinks those are his parents. They loved him dearly, and he never knew that he was not their real son. Without a care in the world, he grew to manhood because he didn't know anything about this. And one day he went to Delphi to find what the future had in store for him. Great was his horror when he heard the words of the oracle. He was destined to kill his father and marry his mother. Okay, so he's going, no, I'm not going to do that. This must never happen, thought Oedipus. He took destiny in his own hands and fled across the mountains, never to see his dear parents again. I'm getting out of here. I'm not going to kill my mother or my father, and I'm not going to marry my mother. I'm not doing that. That's not happening. So he leaves. On a narrow mountain path, he met a chariot of a haughty lord. Give way for our master's chariot, shouted the servants, and tried to push Oedipus off the path. Angrily, Oedipus fought back, and in the struggle, the lord and all his servants were killed, except for one who escaped. Oedipus continued on his way and came to the city of Thebes. But its 7 gates were closed. Nobody dared to enter or leave, for a monster, the Sphinx, had settled on a cliff just outside the city wall. This winged monster, with a woman's head and a lion's body, challenged all who passed by to solve her riddle. If they couldn't, she tore them to pieces. Nobody had yet solved the riddle of the Sphinx. What creature is it that walks on 4 feet in the morning, on 2 at noon, and on 3 in the evening? She asked with a sinister leer as she saw Oedipus. It is man, Oedipus answered. As a child, he crawls on 4. When grown, he walks upright on his 2 feet, and in old age he leans on a staff. The Sphinx let out a horrible scream. Her riddle was solved, and she had lost her powers. In despair, she threw herself to her death. The gates of Thebes burst open, and the people crowded out to thank the stranger who had freed them. Their old king had recently been killed. Did you hear that? Leaving no son to inherit the throne. And when they heard that Oedipus was a prince from Corinth, they asked him to marry their widowed queen and become their king. To be sure, Queen Jocasta was much older than Oedipus, but she was still beautiful, for she wore a magic necklace that the gods had given Harmonia, we read about that one a while ago, the first queen of Thebes. Those who wore that necklace stayed young and beautiful all their lives. Thus Oedipus became king of Thebes, and he ruled the city justly and wisely for many years. One day the news reached him that the king of Corinth had died the peaceful death of old age. Remember, his adopted father, who he thought was his real father. And while he mourned his father, he was glad that he had been spared from a terrible destiny. Shortly afterward, a pestilence, that's like a like a plague or a pandemic like what we're going through. A pestilence broke out in Thebes, and people died in great numbers. Oedipus sent for a seer and asked how he could save his people. The pestilence would last until the death of the old king had been avenged, said the seer. Oedipus swore that he would find the man who had killed the old king and put his eyes out, cut his eyes out. He sent his men to search till they found the one surviving servant in King Laius's party. When he was brought before King Oedipus, the servant recognized him at once as the slayer of the old king. And now the whole terrible truth came out, for he was also the selfsame servant who had abandoned the infant Oedipus in the mountains and had known all the while that the child had been found and adopted by the king of Corinth. So now he knows. He did kill his father on the road. That on the road when they attacked, he killed them and he killed his father, but he didn't know it was his father. Then he comes back to Thebes, answers the riddle of the Sphinx, goes into Thebes. They want him to marry their widowed queen, and he does. But that's his mother. That was his mother that he married. In despair, Queen Jocasta went to her room and took her own life. She killed herself. And Oedipus, in horror, put out his own eyes. He took a dagger and he gouged out his own eyes. See, I told you it's brutal. It's a terrible story. It's brutal. It's horrible. Put out his own eyes and left Thebes, a broken old man. His daughter Antigone went with him, and they wandered from place to place, turned away from every city till at last they came to Athens. Not cursed, but blessed will be the place where you lie down and close your eyes, said Theseus when he had heard the story. No man could have tried harder than you to escape his destiny. The avenging Erinyes, who had been chasing him, now dropped their whips, and Oedipus could die in peace. His two sons, Eteocles and Polynices, had no regard for the sufferings of their father. They stayed in Thebes and fought over the throne. At last, they agreed to take turns being king, 1 year at a time. Eteocles ruled Thebes first, and then his year was up. He refused to give up the throne. Polynices left Thebes in a rage, taking with him the magic necklace of Harmonia, vowing to return with an army and take his rightful throne by force. He went to his father-in-law, the king of Argos, and tried to persuade him to send an army to Thebes. The king had an aging and very vain sister who had great influence over him. Polynices promised her the magic necklace of Harmonia, which would make her young and beautiful again, if she could persuade her brother to go against Thebes. So great are the powers of a vain woman that not only the king of Argos and his men, but 7 armies of brave men set forth with Polynices to storm the 7 gates of Thebes, most of them never to return, because one powerful woman wanted to be young and beautiful. Neither could the 7 armies storm the 7 gates of Thebes, nor could the Thebans drive the attackers away. So it was decided that the 2 brothers should fight in single combat, the winner to be king. Eteocles gave his brother a mortal wound, but Polynices, before he fell, dealt him a deadly blow in return. Side by side they lay dead on the field, and all the bloodshed had been in vain. The son of Eteocles became king of Thebes, and Harmonia's necklace, which had brought so much misfortune, was hung up in a temple in Delphi, so no woman would ever wear it again. And that's it. Next story is Jason and the Golden Fleece, or Jason and the Argonauts, which is a well-known story. All right, here we go. Bye, guys. We'll see you next time.